I'm happy to do this interview for two reasons. First of all, because of this young lady that I'm interviewing. And secondly, because of the organization that it represents. They both are phenomenal, and I'm just so happy to do it. And you know, I heard ex-President Clinton say last night that hard work is hard and change is hard. Mm-hmm. It's not just something you could jump up and do. And then it's not necessarily fun. Matter of fact, Bill says some people say it's boring, but it's absolutely necessary. So I want to interview this young lady, not only as it relates to her and what she's doing, but also as it relates to the organization that she represents. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham, interviewing Miss Sarah Hunt, you know, who has been a mainstay in our community for a long time. And I tell you, if you want it done, you know, tell Sarah. If there's something that's going on wrong in the community and you want somebody to address it, tell Sarah. If you want somebody who ain't scared and who will address any issue, tell Sarah. If you want somebody to address issues that ought to be addressed, but not anything that you're playing around with, something that's serious, tell Sarah. So I'm just so happy to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And tell us a little bit about yourself personally first.
Well, I'm from a little town called Claxton, Georgia. It was named the fruitcake capital of the world because they made fruitcakes and they actually distribute them all over the world through the Civitan organization. And I grew up doing segregation, and our family was poor, but we thought we were living in town. And I didn't realize I was poor until I moved out and came to Macon. And then I found out I didn't have anything. But when I was in Claxton, I felt like I had everything because we had land and we had position, status in the family, with my grandfather being the only plumber. And my aunt was a school teacher. And during that time, the teachers lived in the community with the family. So everybody was like one big family. And from a little girl, I was taught to be an advocate for people that was less than me, students, seniors. I remember before my grandmother passed, I was 11 years old, and I was disturbed about something that was going on in our community. And it was a few of us young people that was fussing about it, and we were complaining about it to the deacons and the ministers, but nobody was doing anything. So I went to my grandmother. I said, will I get in trouble if I go with Larry and those and we go downtown and protest about us not being able to walk across the courthouse yard? She says, no. She said, because if you don't stand up for something, you lay down for anything. And so I had my grandfather to make me some little pipes. He'd take some little pipes that he had, and I had him to make me 4. And I gave the guys that was going with me one of those little pipes, and we stuck them down in our
Now, these were your weapons.
And so my sister was coming behind me, and she was just hollering, no, you gonna get, I said, go home. I made her go back. And we went on, and that day, the boy said, nigga, didn't I tell you not to come across this courthouse yard? I said, oh, you come down here and make me turn around. And I kept right on walking. So when he walked down there and grabbed me, I just popped him upside the head with that iron pipe. The blood started running, and the other two went screaming. And they went and got the sheriff, and he says, I told y'all to leave Leo's daughter alone. she got a lot of her granddaddy in her. So he said, come on, Sarah. He put me in the car, and he carried me home. He said, Cardia, he said, this girl just busted one of them upside the head. And said, we decided to bring her on home. Said, but I don't think she's going to have any more trouble going across the courthouse yard anymore.
Wow.
So sometimes, even though you can't let fear grip you to the point that you can't stand up for yourself. And now, with all that's going on in our communities and everything, we got to stand together. We got to stand up, we got to stand together, And we've gotta make sure that we make our young people know that education is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what we were taught. And we were taught all about our ancestors in school. They don't do that now. And we were raised learning about all of the famous African American people. At that time we said black people. We learned all about 200 and 300s that we learned about each year. So it wasn't like 2 or 3, the same 2 or 3 every time. So when I started teaching, that was one thing that I had, that my children were gonna know who they were,
Right.
and their ancestors, and to let them know that you come from royalty and you should appreciate yourself. And you gotta have self-worth, and you're gonna want to be somebody. And the only way you can do that is get an education.
That's outstanding. So now, when did you start teaching and where did you start teaching?
Okay, I started teaching in 1992. I was a mortgage broker at first, and my son, who was, I think Sharon must have been about 12, he came to me one day, he said, "You don't care anything about me." I said, "Why you say that?" He said, "You haven't been to not one soccer game, you haven't been to not one football game, you haven't been to not one basketball game, you haven't been to one PTA meeting." And he said, and you care more about those people in their old raggedy houses than you care about me. I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm glad you brought this to my attention." I said, "But now one thing you need to understand, the money that we have to spend now, we won't have it like that anymore." I said, "I can get another job. I don't even have any problems with that." He said, "Well, I want you, I don't want any money. I want you." I said, "Okay, we can handle it." And I went to Ms. Liddy Wembley, and I told her, I said, "I gotta make a career change." I said, "But I don't know what it is I'm really interested in." So she said, "I tell you what," she said, "when I need somebody to come sub for me," she said, "you come sub," and she said, "then you won't have to do afternoon duty. You can leave time enough to go into your office and do some work." So I did that for about 6 months, and Charles Sheftal, who's gone now, he had a position. One of his teachers went to Desert Storm, and Miss Wembley told him about me. And he knew me already, but he didn't know I had been teaching. So he had me to come, and the children, I was teaching science, the children were failing the science class. So I told him, I said, "Will you let me do it my way?" He said, "Yes." So I started taking them outside, and whatever, we were studying about rocks, we went out and collected rocks, and we come back in and I had a book for them. They had to find the rocks and identify them and all of this, and it became fun. And when it became fun, and I had them to do an insect project, and they had to find different insects and identify them and name them and all of this, and the kids just blossomed. Mr. Sheffield, I said, "Well, everybody in the class is passing now, so you there." I said, "Well, it's fun." And if we were doing so, and one thing that disturbed me, I can't understand why teachers tell children, "Shut up, sit down, and don't talk." But when we go in a meeting, we steady yapping when the principal's trying to talk. And you gotta do something to steer the children so that they can have constructive conversation. So I started doing small groups. And I would always give them 5 questions and tell them they had 15 minutes to answer those 5 questions. Well, they had a chance to talk. Even though they were talking about classwork, they had a chance to talk.
Talking, yeah.
So when they would talk about chewing gum and eating candy in class, the teachers were sending them to the principal's office. I said, "Now listen, I like to chew gum and eat candy too." I said, "But now, you can't have any candy, any gum. You have to let me know that you bringing it, and bring enough for everybody." I said, "Let me know so I can put it in my lesson plan now." They said, "Lesson plan?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Bring it on." And one girl said, she's trying to be smart. She said, "Well, I'm bringing peanut M&Ms tomorrow." And I said, "Well, you need to bring a pack for everybody in your class." She said, "Oh, I can do that." I said, "Okay." I said, "Now, you bring the peanuts, the sorted?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, the ones in the yellow package?" She said, "Yes, ma'am." So I went and bought me a pack. And I sat down and I looked at what I could do with that M&M. And I had 10 questions that they had to answer with the M&M. I had paper towels and I spreaded it out on, put the paper, everybody had a paper towel. They had to open their packet first. Then they had to put the M&Ms down. They had to count and tell how many M&Ms was in the package, how many of different colors were in there. If they had anything on them other than an M, They had to tell me that if it was disfigured or it was, all of them were the same size, they had to put all that on there. I said, now, you need to write me an essay about your M&Ms. I said, you need to have an introductory paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. I need to have a simple sentence. I need to have some compound sentences, and I need to have a complex sentence. I said, I need to have some descriptive adverbs. I need to have some adjectives. And I just told her, I said, I need verbs more than is, are, and simple verbs like that. I said, I need some strong verbs in there. I said, now, you got 30 minutes to write your essay. They told her, you did not raise your hand in front of me. So then, I said, now who gonna bring some candy for us for tomorrow? Nobody. I didn't have to worry about any more candy coming in class. So one of them gonna get smart, say, I want to bring some bubble gum. I said, oh yeah, we see, do bubble gum. Then he talked about, she ain't gonna ask me a question about bubble gum. So when he got down, what is bubble gum made out of? What else can you chew that would be like bubble gum? You know, long time ago, we used to take tar and chew it for gum. I just told him, just had a whole lot of things. I said, oh, bring it. I said, now, are you going to bring a variety or just one kind? He said, oh, I'm just going to bring the one in the wrapper, you know, just the one big bubble gum. I said, oh, good. So when he brought it, I said, now, you chew it and tell me how long it takes for the sweet to get out of your bubble gum. I said, oh, yeah. I said, I want y'all to chew a while. I said, but while y'all chewing, we're going to be doing some other stuff, too. But y'all chew. Have a good time chewing. So Mr. Roger came out. He said, Miss Hunt, all these children in there chewing gum. I said, oh, some activity. He said, oh. So they chewed the gum, and I had 10 questions about the bubble gum. At the end of the day, they said, if anybody bring any candy or bubble gum in here, when we go out of that pair, I'll beat y'all tail. I had no more problems with anybody bringing bubble gum or candy. I said, anybody gonna bring in the cookie? No. So that ended the eating in my class because I just told them, if you bring it, bring enough for everybody and we'll all eat.
Right. You know, that's remarkable, and congratulations. And I hope that a lot of teachers, you know, listen to this, because oftentimes when we think that our kids are difficult to reach, they really aren't.
No, they're not.
You know, and I've always said, and I know somebody's gonna get angry with me, but it's the teacher. A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times it's the teacher, and I prove it to you. And we need to talk about the National Action Network in a minute. But I think education is more important.
It's extremely important.
You know,
it's extremely important.
But when I was teaching, and a lot of people don't know this, that I used to teach school. You did.
Somebody told me that.
Yeah, I used to teach at Central. You know, and I would notice that a kid would be in somebody else's class. I walk down the hall and just be acting up and acting up and acting up. But then when that same kid came to my class,
you didn't have that problem.
I didn't have that problem, you know, because I didn't take the problem. I didn't play the problem, you know. So,
right.
You know, so teachers can be a change maker.
You have to be you have to want to be a change agent. The children come to school with so many things going on wrong in their lives from home. And sometimes you have to get to know that child. Sometimes you even have to visit the home to know what is going on with that child. I remember, she's not any longer with us, Joanne Stewart was in my teaching team. And we sat down and talked in our meeting. I said, how many of you on our planning time can we take at least 45 minutes or an hour and go to some of these homes where the children are having serious problems? And they said, well, I would. So I went and asked Mr. Tompkins, was our principal. He said, yes.
Right.
Okay. He gave us permission. So on our planning time, we got together in the car and went to a couple of houses. And when we got there, the child, I said, we missed you at school today and we came to see if you were sick. No, ma'am, where was the child sitting home babysitting? Where was the mother laying in the bed? He there with the little baby. then when the mother, he said, my teacher out here, he said, she went to cussing. Wasn't she doing it? And so Joanne said, oh, I said, oh, don't be afraid. I said, So when she came to the door, she said, oh, that's you, ain't Miss Hunt. I said, yeah, this mean. I said, now you want to repeat what you were saying? She said, well, not really. I said, because first of all, you're in violation. I said, number one, your child is supposed to be in school. I said, he is not. I said, so if we report this, I said, social service will be coming in here. Not another day does he need to miss school. I said, do you have a job? She said, no. I said, well, you can babysit, but he needs to come to school. I said, now, if we have to, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll bring social services with us. I didn't have any more problem. And that child, when he got to school today, he just grabbed me and hugged me. Thank you, Miss Hunt. I've had him come to school hungry. And I always go to the lunchroom, you know, they have milk and juice at the end of the day, and I would ask them, could I have it? And I had a refrigerator in the back of my room, and I would put it in there, and I would buy crackers. So if they came to school and said, I didn't have any burgers this morning, I said, ooh, your brain cell's not gonna work. Come here. I give them an orange juice, milk, and a pack of crackers, and they would sit back there and eat it, and then get ready. I said, you think you're ready now to go to have a good day? Yes, ma'am. We have a lot of children that are coming from dysfunctional homes that make them dysfunctional. So we can't jeopardize a child because he's coming from a dysfunctional home. But we have to create stability at school. Let that be the place for them. And it got to the point that the kids, if somebody did something, they'd go tell Miss Hunt. She'll get it straight. I said, wait a minute, you can't be coming telling no teacher on me. Yes, ma'am. And I've had them be running down the hall, ma'am. And if they go into the office, and Mr. Roger, I had 3 extra seats in my classroom for kids that other teachers were sending to the office to put out the classroom. He would send them down there with me, and I said, okay, you know the rule in this room. Yes, ma'am. I said, okay, let's get out our boots, get to work. And see, I circulated with my children, and I go back to them and see what I said, okay, when I come back, I need you to have that finished for me. And when they get through, at the end of the day, I said, now, before you go home this afternoon, I said, you come back here, I got a surprise for you. When they come back, I said, now, you so good in my room today. Now, I want you to do this in the other class, and I'd give them a candy bar or something like that. And they would just go out, oh, she gave me a candy bar. Said I was good. You can't demonize children because they have problems. You gotta just love them.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Not only have you been, this is a call to action.
Call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham, interviewing Miss Sarah Hunt, who's an excellent educator and instructor who been a freedom fighter since she was 11 years old. Glad Dr. King came by to preach nonviolence. But she has been intimately involved in the community for a long time. And presently, she's still involved and is involved with an organization called the National Action Network.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
It was founded by Reverend Alex Sharpton, and he celebrated 25 years in April, the 25th anniversary of National Action Network. And the whole thing is for us to get up and be about action, solving some of the problems that's going on in our community. He's constantly doing a call to action. We've got a call to action coming forth August the 27th and 28th. We're going to Washington, D.C. to join Congressman John Lewis.
Oh my God, yeah.
And he did a sit-in in the Congress about the gun violence and the changing of the gun laws. And we're going to do a march on Washington about that. And we'll also be talking about the gay rights and also looking at the criminal justice system. It definitely needs reform. When a young person is caught with a less than an ounce of marijuana and is given 20 years, and somebody just kills somebody and they only get 10. Something's wrong with that scenario. And whenever you have young people that have been, like the young man down in the young boy high school student in Valdosta that was killed in the gym, and they wanted to say it was an accident. There's no way a child as big as he is got down in a little old mat, rolled up.
And wrapped himself up in it.
Wrapped himself up in the mat and tied up and standing up in the mat. Come on. And blood spatters everywhere. So what have they done? They have torn the gym down. They have completely removed the gym. The gym has been torn down. So whatever evidence you didn't collect, you will not be able to collect it now. So we as a people have got to learn to stand together and be involved with what's going on. We can no longer say, that doesn't concern me. We can no longer put it in somebody else's house and say, it's their problem, not mine, when it's all of our problems. The same thing with what's going on in our city right now. They are doing something about the blight, but are they doing all that they can do? So many times we get community development funds in here, and we're getting ready to do an investigation on that through National Action Network. Millions of dollars have come in here on the backs of the people that live in East Macon, South Macon, and West Macon, but there's no money spent there. Those areas should not be in the predicament that they're in with the kind of monies that have come in here through those people. That's the people in the census that the community development money is sent here for the underdeveloped and underserved communities. But the undeveloped and underserved communities are still undeveloped and unserved 40 years later. So where is the money? What was the money used for? Now, the Dannenberg building, they gave them $3-point-something million to renovate that and to do that. You gonna give them, and they got a loan, and they're getting deferments on the loan? Come on now. There's something not right about that. Now, I go down there and try to get $1 million loan. They're gonna want to look at everything in my history that could ever been wrong, so they can deny me the loan. So there's no equity in the economic system. And that's something we need to fight for. Justice in all facets, social and economic, and in the justice system.
So how does the National Action Network function here in the city? Do you have a meeting? Do you send out a newsletter? Or do you have an email blast?
Okay, what we usually do, we have an email blast, and right now what we're doing, we do what we call a conference call twice a month, and where all of the members get on there and we talk about what it is that's coming up, what we're going to do next, plan our next project that's coming forth. And I'm on a conference call twice a month with the national office, and I've just been appointed to the National Field Department to assist our National Field Director.
All right now, congratulations.
And thank you. And in April, when I went to the convention, Reverend Sharpton honored me as Woman of Power. They did the Women of Power luncheon, and I was honored along with Joy off of MSNBC and Juanita Abernathy,
right,
and several others, and I took that as a great honor.
They got it right.
And I just kept saying, how did you choose me out of all the people that
they got it right.
making that are doing things to help other people? The main thing I'm focusing on now is we're going to be working with our young people. I think somewhere or another we need to have a conversation with our young people, because there are things that they can tell us that we need to do to alleviate some of these problems that we have going on. And until we have that conversation, it's going to continuously be turmoil.
I'll tell you what, you still have your show?
Yes.
Andrea, I'd like for us to do a junk show at some point, maybe at City Hall, called A Conversation with Young People, hosted by Sarah Hunt and Alex Habersham, and I like to do it live. And you still got your talk show?
Yes, come on every Tuesday at 10, from 10 to 11.
Well,
And hopefully, with the new management of the station, it's going to be, it is a 24-hour station. And I've kind of remembered when I used to be on the radio with WBML back in the 80s, I used to do midnight to 6. And I played music and I did conversation. And you'd be surprised how many people be up
oh yeah.
late at night, can't sleep.
So which station are you on?
100.5 FM.
Okay, 100.5 FM. And when do you come on?
Every Tuesday from 10 to 11.
Okay, let's listen to her. I'm sure that you all are very interested in the conversation that she's holding. Is a call in?
Yes, they can call in. The call-in number is 478-646-5858. And I'd love for them to call in and comment on the topic that we're discussing.
I'll ask questions.
They wanted the sheriff to answer some questions, so I had him to come. And they called in and asked questions, and he answered them. And it did something for the people in the community.
And it did something for the community.
For them
I'll say that about the sheriff. He's willing to come.
That's right. And we had 3 sit-ins against gun violence, for gun violence awareness, and he was to 2 of them. One, he was not able to make it because he had to be out of town, but he had his deputies there.
This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham, having interviewed Miss Sarah Hunt, you know, who has been a freedom fighter, a radio host, an instructor, a community activist, and several other things. Mortgage broker. And I want to say thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you
for all
so
you
much.
do. And give the number for the radio station again.
478-646-5858.
And they can call you at what time on what days?
Now, don't call me at 10. Call me anytime after 10:15, because the president's on. I have the president play the president's message that he does on Saturdays.
Okay.
I play it every Tuesday, so the people can hear. I am so tired of people saying Barack Obama hasn't done anything for me. But if you go to www.whitehouse.gov, you will see the hundreds of things that he has tried to get Congress to pass. He's done administrative passes on some of it, but it doesn't last but a year. So if he can get Congress, but they're people of their word, men of their word. They said they were going to make him a one term, but when he made that second term, they said he wasn't going to be able to get anything accomplished. But he has accomplished some things.
Okay, well, call her after the president goes off.
Yes.
So she can provide more information on the conversation, answer any questions you may have, or listen to any comments you may have. This is a call to action.
A call to action.
I'm your host, Alex Habersham. Have a great day.